Previously on ALC201.
Last week we interrogated the various ways in which we learn, from reading and researching, to watching videos, to attending lectures and seminars, to discussing and debating online and in class, to making things. And all of these are crucial aspects of the unit, and I hope you'll engage with them fully throughout the trimester. We also thought about our own personal context, reflecting on where we are coming from and also where we hope to go in relation to digital media. A few students very generously offered to share their initial thoughts with us.
Thanks very much for talking to us. So you are enrolled in the Bachelor of Arts Media and Communication. What do you hope to get out of the unit?
I previously did a TAFE diploma in professional writing and editing, and well, what I'd like to get is a job. For now, I'm happy to get an understanding of the world around me, or in this case, the world on my screen.
I'm doing secondary teaching and I want to teach media, so I did the first year units. It's a little bit intimidating. I'm not great with online forums, I don't have a blog, but I do have Twitter and Facebook and Instagram, so kind of up to date maybe. But yeah, no, I'm excited.
We looked at the case studies from the study notes document and also thought through our perceptions of digital media generally, reflecting on how our often instinctive negative feelings towards new devices and websites can change once we start to use them.
My sisters with MySpace, I used to give them a real, bashing about wasting their time on MySpace, but my sister does makeup and she runs her business out of, online media, just pretty much but word of mouth, but digital word of mouth is just supplying her with her income now, and her boyfriend as well. They totally operate online basically. He works from home doing graphic design and it's all online, everything now. So
Yeah, and you've been converted to MySpace and Twitter?
Twitter all the way convert. Yeah, I used to, sort of poo-poo the idea of, the random thoughts of just strangers, but there's some value to the random thoughts of strangers.
Another thing we did was explore and critique the Media Studies 2.0 approach, and we thought about what it might mean for us in this unit.
And what do you think about this idea of, in Media Studies 2.0, of participating through building learning resources as you are with this meLecture here?
I don't mind it. It is like cresting the wave, I suppose. There's about as much chance of falling into it as there is of somehow staying on it and then realising you want to go back on it again. I don't know how that analogy really relates to media, but either way, there's a lot of paths you can go with it. I don't know where I'm going to go or if I can go anywhere with it, but I look forward to finding out.
Hey folks, welcome to week 2. Many thanks to those students who've helped make this meLecture possible. This week we're looking at identity. I'm not going to say too much on this subject because David Marshall's already given you a brilliant lecture and lots of things to think about. Just to raise a few issues here, this week we can look at things ranging from how we portray ourselves online, which is very, very important and something I'll come back to later on, to the broader issue of what has digital media done to the very notion of identity. Has technology transformed or become part of our identity? Think of the mobile phone. Is it now a bodily attachment? I know that I personally can't leave the house without checking for my mobile as much as I check for my keys. What is this saying about ourselves? Is the mobile and similar devices also a fashion accessory? Do you know anyone who's upgraded a device, at least in part because of its aesthetic appearance? What does this say? There's been lots written on this. Robert McDougall, for example, has written in his recent book Digination that the iPod and other similar devices have the potential to recreate our acoustic space and transform our immediate physical environments as well as our relationships to them. McDougall writes of the various ways in which personal digital music devices, or PDMDs, enable the reconfiguration of perceptual space within individualized experiential contexts. These devices afford users a relatively high-resolution sound space that, when tuned properly, often replaces the perceiver both spatially and temporally. In so doing, they have the capacity to fundamentally recast the nature of personal experience. And this is very interesting for next time you're on public transport and you notice that more than half the people on the train or tram or bus are listening to music or some other form of entertainment on their mobile devices. What does this suggest? I know that a number of students enrolled in this unit are from education degrees, and I thought it would be particularly useful for them, but also highly relevant for everyone else, if I talked to a highly experienced secondary school teacher I know about digital media, identity and everyday life. I had a quick chat to Melody O'Mara, who I knew back in my university days. Melody and I didn't have Facebook. We maybe sent a few emails to each other and certainly a few text messages. But now these days Melody works at what's known as an iPad school, and she's thrown into a situation where students have grown up with mobile devices and social media. Let's see what she had to say. We are here today talking to Melody O'Mara. Thanks very much, Mel, for having a chat to us. I'm wondering if you could maybe just tell us a little bit about your background as a secondary school teacher over the last several years.
Yep. I've been a secondary school teacher for about 7.5 years. This is my 8th year. And I did my first 5 years of teaching at a state school in Shepparton, and the last couple of years have been at a select entry school, and I'm now teaching at a state school in Melbourne.
Right.
So,
great. And you said to me before that the current school you are at is an iPad school.
yes, certain year levels all have iPads, some of the year levels have laptops, but there's a program in the school for digital media, so the students are engaged in that fairly consistently. It's used to different degrees in different classes, I suppose, depending on who's teaching it and their level of experience with that sort of thing. And, and I guess the uptake from the kids varies as well. And I guess how responsibly they use it varies as well too.
Right. And what we're looking at mostly this week is the topic of identity broadly. I mean, massive topic, but nonetheless we're mainly looking at how people, particularly young people, but not only they construct their online personas, their public selves through things like Facebook and that kind of social networking site. Can you tell us a little bit about how social media is impacting on teaching and what you can or try to do, if at all, in relation to it?
Yeah, well, it's hard to know if you're doing, if you can really do anything about it, I suppose. And it doesn't have to mean that it's a bad thing, but it's definitely there and it's not going away. And the Facebook thing is a bit of a grey area in a lot of schools. Like the school I currently teach at has policy on Facebook usage, as in teachers are not allowed to be friends with any of their students on Facebook, and we're not allowed to use Facebook groups for, curriculum or teaching purposes. It needs to be the school's electronic system or something that's, sort of being validated for educational purposes, I suppose. But that doesn't mean that Facebook doesn't get used at a lot of other schools. Like, it's a real grey area because it's such a new thing. A lot of places don't actually have a policy on it, so it's really a bit hard to know where you stand on it, or where schools stand on it a lot of the time. But I mean, kids use Facebook all the time. I can see why a lot of schools would, try to utilise it in the classroom and create, groups for different subjects out of it, because that is what the kids are engaged in all the time, and it's easier to actually get them to use that than it is to get them to use something like a blog or the school's network or, anything that they have to sort of log into separately. They seem to be a lot less likely to use.
And you were saying before, Mel, that at your school the iPad is the official device, whereas the mobile phone, while unofficial and not necessarily encouraged, permeates the school environment in a lot of different ways. Can you say some more about that and how students rely, if not over-rely, on the mobile device? The reason I asked is that a lot of scholars have actually been talking about mobile device technology as
being an almost prosthetic limb from which people can really detach themselves, if you like.
Yes, I think that's a pretty fair assessment of the relationship a lot of young people have with their mobile phones. They're really quite dependent on them and actually struggle to function without them. Like numerous occasions where I've confiscated a phone from a kid and they just have reacted so badly, and to an extent where you can actually tell that it's, you know, actually some kind of traumatised reaction to having it taken away from them. I mean, they know they're going to get it back at the end of the lesson, if not the end of the day, but the idea of being separated from it actually gives them some quite genuine anxiety, which is interesting. I don't know what that means or whether that's a terrible thing or something to be worried about, but there's definitely a dependency going on. I challenged some Year 12 students recently to, the next time they get a text message, to not check it for just 10 minutes, just to leave it in their pockets for 10 minutes and not check it straight away. And they really found that a difficult concept and thought that that would be too hard. So, you know, but I think a lot of it's to do with not, you know, we can't, I don't know, the answer is not necessarily to just try to outlaw mobile phones or anything. It probably has to be in educating people about appropriate use of them.
Yeah. I guess the last thing I wanted to ask was about identity in relation to teachers and the use of social media, including that outside work. I know that you use Facebook a lot more than me, which isn't necessarily very difficult. But do you keep in mind, even if you have the most stringent Facebook privacy settings, do you find yourself thinking, well, if a student sees me down the street with someone, they're probably going to start making assumptions, even if it's completely innocent anyway. So social media is probably going to have the same kinds of assumptions. You know, you've got to think students might see you in different forums.
Yeah, I think it's, I mean, you know, I think people have the right to, you know, their own privacy, but I think you also have to accept that as soon as something is online, even if you've got the best privacy settings in the world on Facebook, that it's not going away for a start. And a lot of kids don't realise that as well, that once something's on the internet, it actually stays on there. You can delete photos or you can delete posts or, you know, delete things as much as you like, or, you know, like kind of like deleting your history on your browser, but your cyber footprint, I suppose, is still out there. So, yeah, you do have to be a bit careful, and I think probably the best way to go is to just, if you feel comfortable with a student finding something that you'd put on Facebook, then you probably shouldn't put it up there. But having said that, you also, you know, don't want to be paranoid about it either. But yeah, it's a bit of a fine line, and you do have to be a bit careful, because it doesn't take much to be taken out of context, I suppose.
Yeah, perfect. Well, thank you very much again for talking to us.
That's okay.